I also use a measuring tape and a T-square. I think it's called a T-square. This blue tool here. As you can see around this column, I had to cut out parts of the material. When doing my vapor proofing, I used this heavy-duty plastic sheeting. This is 6 mil. I picked it up. It was relatively cheap. It wasn't in the flooring section. It was actually in the concrete section of the hardware store. I also used double-sided tape. So here's the double-sided tape underneath. I stuck that to my concrete floor in sections and then laid the sheeting on top of it while pulling the double-sided tape off. And then for anything that has a seam between plastic sheetings, I just used packing tape. After you laid the sheeting down, you might find that you maybe have some rocks underneath or some kind of debris, and so when I'm laying my planks, I run my hand over everything to make sure that there's no material under there. If there is, I use the knife, make a little gash in the plastic, pull the material or the debris out, and then use the tape and tape over the hole I just made. Here I'm at the end. My plank is obviously too long, so I need this length. I can either use the tape measure and cut it off for this piece, or I can flip this one over, get it to where I want, use my pencil, and then I know where I need to cut this board. And then when I bring it back, this piece will fit exactly in here. And make sure you leave some gap between the planks and the wall in case this material ever expands. So the reason I take my time with plank flooring, if you don't do it properly, if you have, say, a mistake here and you have a rather large seam and you can't fix it without taking the board out, then you have to take out everything you've done up until that point. You have to back all of this stuff out in order to get back to that single board that you just made an error with. Another good idea on these floors is to make sure that you're staggering the boards. The manufacturer gives you all different kinds of recommendations or ideas for how to do this. I do as a friend recommended to me, a random cut. So I might have two seams that are kind of look like a step, but it doesn't continue to go through the entire section. So I'll have maybe a step here and then maybe jump a couple boards and then you'll see the step again. Here's what I mean by stepping. If you have two boards, two planks, one's here, and you're going to add another layer, you wouldn't want to have these two boards line up like this through the area, because you end up with a weak spot. You want to make sure that they're staggered. Some manufacturers, they recommend a third. That you cut, you have like a third here. Some might be a half. And what I mean by a step as well is this looks like a step in this direction. So if you look at some floors, you'll see this pattern throughout the entire floor. And this distance will be exactly the same throughout the floor. I tend to do it in a different way, which it might not be the manufacturer's recommendation, whereas the length of this step could be different throughout the entire floor. So I might go here, and then the next one up, it might be only this length here. But you don't want it too short. This would be way too short. You need a tolerable amount of width here, otherwise you can end up with a weak spot right in here. This would, for example, would be way too weak. You might end up cracking this board right in this section. Whereas here, it's going to hold together. It's going to be able to flex better.